So in this video, I'm going to go over how to simplify fractions with you. So the first step to simplifying fractions is finding the greatest common factor. So that's the factor that both of the both of the numbers have in common. So we are going to start with this simple one, 4/12 here. All right, and the first thing we want to do is find the greatest common factor, like I said. So we're going to start with our numerator. We have 1 is always a factor of every number. 2 is a factor, and 4. 1, 2, and 4 are the factors of 4. So then we're going to look down at 12. We'll start with 1. 2 is a factor. 3. 3 times 4 gives me 12, so I know 4 is a factor. 6. And then 12, of course, itself. So these are the factors of 12, these are the factors of 4. Now what we want to do is figure out which one of the factors both the numerator and denominator have in common, but also is the biggest one that they have in common. So I can see that 4 is one they have in common, and it's also the largest one that they have in common. So in order to simplify now, I want to divide both the numerator and denominator by 4, which is the greatest common factor, and I will get 4 divided by 4 is 1, and 12 divided by 4 is 3. So 4/12 simplified is 1/3. All right, let's move on to the next one. Here we have 12/16. So again, I'm going to list all the factors. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 12. And then the factors of 16 are 1, 2. I know 2 is because it's even. Can 3 times anything give me 16? No. 4, definitely a factor. 4 times 4 gives me 16. 5, 6, 7. 2 times 8 gives me 16, and 1 times 16 is 16. So these are all the factors, and then we just have to look and see which one they have in common that is the biggest one they have in common, and I can see that again 4 is the largest factor that they have in common. See, they both have 2 in common as well, but that's not the greatest common factor. We want it to be the largest factor that they have in common, so that in this case would be 4. So then we just need to divide both sides by that GCF, or greatest common factor, and we get 12 divided by 4 is 3, and 16 divided by 4 is 4. So the simplified version of 12/16 is 6/4. All right, now we have 14 and over 28. So list the factors. 1, it's even, so I know 2 is a factor. I don't think 3 times anything gives me 14. 4 times nothing gives me 14. 5, no. 6, no. So then I guess we're just going to go from 2 to 7, because 2 times 7 gives me 14, and then 14, of course, is a factor of itself. So if you notice, when you probably remember this from doing greatest common factor, but they actually connect to each other. So 1 times 14 is 14, 2 times 7 is 14. Just a little something to keep an eye on when you're looking for greatest common factors. So anyway, back to our factor counting. So we have 28. 1 is a factor of 28. 2, 3, let's see. No, nothing times 3 gives me 28. So let's look at 4. 4 is a factor. 5 isn't, 6 isn't, and then 7 is, because 4 times 7 is 28. 2 times 14 is 28, and 1 times 28 is 28. So I'm just going to connect those to show you what I'm talking about there. So all of those pairs give you 28. That's how I know they're all factors. All right, so let's look and see which one is the greatest factor that they have in common. And actually it's pretty high, we're lucky here. So 14 seems to be the factor that they both have in common, that is the biggest. So, oops, I meant to write a division sign there. So 14 divided by 14 28 divided by 14, remember you want to do the same thing on both sides. 14 divided by 14 is 1, and 28 divided by 14 is 2, so we end up with 1/2. And it makes sense because 14 is actually half of 28, so the simplified version of that would be 1/2. All right, let's go down to this practice problem here, 35 over 50. Okay. So we have 1. 35 is odd, so 2 is not a factor of 35. 3, no. 4, 5 definitely is. I know 5 times 7 gives me 35, so 7 is a factor. And then 1 times 35. So those are all the factors of 35. 50, 1, 2, not 3, 4, we have 5. Actually, 4 is a factor because it would be, no, it's not, sorry. Okay, so 5 times 10 gives me 50, 2 times 25 gives me 50, and 1 times 50 gives me 50. So I was saying 5 times 10, 2 times 25, and 1 times 50. So I know those are all the factors. All right, so the greatest factor they have in common is 5. So let's divide both sides by that GCF, or greatest common factor. 35 divided by 5 is 7, and 50 divided by 5 is 10. So 7/10 is the simplest form of 35 over 50. Okay, 12 36ths. Let's do the factors. All right, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4. If you want to make it easier on yourself, you could, especially if you've done a fraction in the past, like up here we have done 12 already, so I'm just going to copy the factors right over. 12 is pretty simple, but those are all the factors of 12. So then I'm going to look at 36, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 isn't, 6 is. 6 times itself gives me 36. So now I'm going to look at the factors I have here. So 4 times 9 gives me 36. 3 times 12, 2 times 18, and 1 times 36. So we have a lot of factors of 36 there. Doesn't have to look pretty, just as long as you get them all down, and then you're able to figure out what the greatest common factor is. So in this case, it's 12. And then we're going to divide both sides by 12. So 12 divided by 12 is 1. 36 divided by 12 is 3. So the simplified version of 12/36 is 1/3. Okay? All right, 8/10. Factors are 1, 2, 4, and 8. 10, we have 1, 2, 5, and 10. Our greatest common factor is 2. So sometimes they're not all that big, but at least they're still a greatest common factor. Okay, so let's divide both sides by that GCF, and we end up with 4/5. 4/5 is the lowest version of 8/10. Okay, so now we have 28/70. 28's factors: 1, 2, 4, 7, 14, and 28. Okay, I'm going to connect them just to show you. 1 times 28 is 28, 2 times 14 is 28, and 4 times 7 is 28. So those are all the factors. 70, we have 1, 2, not 3, 4, no, 5, yes, 6, no, 7, yep. 7 times 10 gives me 70. 5 times 14 gives me 70. 2 times 35, and 1 times 70. Okay, so those are all our factors. And our greatest common factor, 28 isn't down here, so let's look at 14. 14 is down here, so that is our GCF. We're going to divide both sides by that greatest common factor. 28 divided by 14 is 2, because we can see here 2 times 14 gives me 28. And then 70 divided by 14 is 5. Okay, so now we have 2/5 is the simplified version of 28/70. Okay, that one was a little bit complicated, probably harder than any that you'll see on your quiz or maybe even your test, but it's still good to know how to do those kind of harder ones. It's a lot of practice with your factors, that's for sure. All right, so 15, factors of 15 are 1, 3, 5, 15. 36, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and then 6 times 6 is 36, so then I know I can start going backwards here. 4 times 7, I'm sorry, no, 4 times 9, I'm sorry, gives me 36. 3 times 12 gives me 36. 2 times 18, and 1 times 36. All right, so I've got a lot down here, not so many up here. So let's see, 15 is not a factor down on the bottom, 5 isn't, but 3 is. So 3 is our GCF. 15, oh, I'm sorry, I did it again. Okay, 15 divided by 3 is 5. And 36 divided by 3 is 12. So 5/12 is the simple version of 15/36. All right, last one here. So 18. We have 1, 2, 3, 6, 9, and 18. Okay, 1 times 18 is 18, 2 times 9, and 3 times 6. So now let's look at 54, sorry. We have 1, 2, 3, 6, 9. All right, so let's see, okay, 6 times 9 is 54, so 3 times 18 is 54. 2 times 27 is 54, and then 1 times 54 is 54. So those are all the factors of 54. Our highest is 18. So we can divide both sides by 18. And 18 divided by 18 is 1. And then 54 divided by 18 is 3. So 18/54 is simplified to 1/3. All right, so I hope that this was helpful for you going over this practice. There's just 2 more things I wanted to show you in this video. So the only times that you're not going to be able to simplify a fraction is when you come across fractions like this. So for example, 1/15. Anytime you see a 1 on the top, that means it is as simple as it's going to get and you cannot make it any smaller. Remember, the whole goal in simplifying fractions is making them as small as possible. And if you have a 1 on the top, it's already as small as it's going to get. All right? So then the other time that you're not going to be able to simplify is when you list out the factors. So we have 1 and 3 are the only factors of 3, and 1 and 17 are the only factors of 17. Now they do have a factor in common, but it's 1. What happens if you divide both sides by 1? You end up with the same fraction again. 3 divided by 1 is 3, 17 divided by 1 is 17. So that is as low as it's going to get. All right, so those are the only 2 times that you will find a fraction you cannot simplify, when there's 1 as the numerator or if there is no greatest common factor other than 1. All right, so I hope that this was helpful for you. Remember, you can rewind, pause, and ask any questions if you need any help at all, but I hope this was helpful for you.